Okay. I don't know what goes on with this stuff.
I hear you. I hear you. It was something where you had like that double sound and whatever you did there is what muted.
Oh, I do. I've done this every time so far. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you hear that double sound again?
Well, you need do you see why I wear earbuds now? Because it feeds back. Like my audio will feed back into your speaker.
There we go. I had to shut down the YouTube on my computer. I don't know why it opened up YouTube. And so then I had that and this going on. Okay, now we are live. Thanks for working through that with us, guys. Just a little technology, no big deal. This is Martha Krejci. I don't know what is on the YouTube channels right now, but this is Martha Krejci. She's a business mentor for me and a friend. I've learned more about her story over the last year and a half as I have engaged with her programs that she has going on, and also just watching her live her life out loud in front of the public arena. I have never met Martha in person. I wait for that day, but as I've listened to her and followed her, I've grown to love her more and more and her story. And I just wanted to share her story with you who follow me here. And she has graciously agreed to come on and do this with me. So thank you, Martha, for coming.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
So what I was thinking we could just do is maybe you could share a little bit about what you do and who you are, and maybe a little background information
sure.
In regards to, first, I want you to share about the business stuff too, but I want you to share about your, how you grew up. Did you know Jesus when you were a kid, or how did that background come about?
Yeah, that's good. I'll share where I am right now and then we'll take it back. So okay. What we do right now is my family is ending poverty. And it sounds really big, but that's what we choose to do. And the way that we're doing it is we empower families to create high profit margin businesses from home, utilizing stuff that they already know that they don't realize they can serve the world with. And that's where we're at right now. But now let's talk about my spiritual walk, how my life has been from the beginning. Now, I grew up in an independent, fundamental Baptist church, and those are a lot of words. And it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different kinds of people, right? But what it meant to me is they were fantastic people, and I loved the people that were in my church. I grew up in Central Illinois, and my parents weren't hugely religious before I was born. And then whenever I was born, it was a daycare that was next to their house, like literally a block away from their house. And they were like, oh, well, there's a daycare over there and it's in that church. And so they sent me to that daycare, and then they started going to that church. And like they had their own religious backgrounds, but they weren't living their faith. I wouldn't say that they would say that they were living their faith, for a long time before then. But yeah, so it kind of brought my entire family back into faith at that point. Now, that church, and I love the people in that church. That church was filled with people that made probably, and this was mid-90s, mid-80s, made between 20 and 40 grand a year, maybe. So mid-level, blue collar, middle class. And my pastor would preach about tithing all the time, not just in the beginning of a service, where it's like, hey, give if you can, like that sort of thing. But it was like the whole service, like all the time. It was Sermon on the Mount or it was tithing. And it was
a little much.
it was a lot, right? And so the church is full of people that make 20 to 40 grand a year. And then my pastor was driving a Cadillac. And so there were some things that already, even in my little tiny mind, were like, what is going on here, right? Like, this is weird, right? This doesn't make sense to me. Also, with the way that the church was set up, it was a lot of rules. I mean, let's just I'm going to use the word legalism because those of us that understand what legalism is, it's essentially it's rules being put in place, acting like they're coming from the Bible or that they're biblically based, but they're not really. They're just rules for the sake of having rules and then getting mad about people not following rules. Okay. So
and people's opinions, turning them into control mechanisms.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's what I grew up in. And so then I started to go to a Christian college, Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I went for one semester. I don't even remember the grades I got. It was that great. So the school was great and it was fun, but I was just I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it. At that point, I started just doing my own thing. And I got curious about stuff. I'd always been a really good kid growing up. I never got in trouble. I didn't sneak out of the house. I didn't do anything. Like I gave my parents a pretty great time. Like in my opinion, I was a little bit sassy. I mean, that's a thing, right? And I was a little, like I had my opinions, but
right.
I gave them a pretty easy time so far as them being afraid for me. I followed the rules. I did the right thing. I was a pretty good kid. Yeah. Right. And then whenever I came back home from that semester in college, I came back home and I started just living the life that I thought I was supposed to live. And it was breaking away from everything the church recommended. It broke away from religion altogether. I broke away from my relationship with Jesus and God. And I broke away from all of that. And I started moving into a place of, it was kind of like woo-woo, right? I was very like hippie woo-woo-ish for a very, very long time. And I didn't have a great time.
What I love about that is that you're still spiritual. That's like you still had a reach and a longing for the spiritual side of life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 100%, 100%. I was searching for that instead of legalism. I tried to find real, and I found what people were touting as real, and I didn't know any better. And I started moving in that direction. I was moving away from legalism because I'm like, this can't be it. It can't be it. It doesn't feel like it can't be it. And so then I started moving in that direction of like the woo-woo spiritual stuff like that. And I went in that direction for a very, 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 very long time. So like 20 years. So everything from, psychics to Reiki to which Reiki is just, that's not really, but anyway, see, I'm already just like, that's not really a big deal, but right. all of these things like Akashic records and all of this stuff that new age people are touting as spirituality, which I have an interesting perspective on that, because I'm not even saying that they're wrong about it being spiritual. I'm saying that they're giving credit to the wrong person or to the wrong entity, right? Because there are people that are like, I follow my intuition and manifesting and da, da, da. Yeah. I'm not saying that ain't a thing. I'm saying you're giving the glory to the wrong person. I'm saying that that's a Holy Spirit thing. And I'm saying that these messages that you're getting is a Holy Spirit thing. And you're calling it something else. And that's, whatever for you, but that's understand. that's actually something
not
else.
What you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. So I went into that for, like I said, a really long time. And whenever I started coming back was, I had a lot of my family members started passing away. I'm in an older family. So my parents were about 40 when they had me. So my family is kind of older. And so I had family members starting to pass away all at this one time. It was like all during this one summer. There was something like 4 or 5 people died that summer. And I was from Central Illinois, and I was living at that point in Eastern Iowa. So for me to go home, it was about a 4-hour drive. And I would take that drive by myself because Mike had to work and, all of this stuff. So I would take the drive by myself, and I took the 4-hour drive there and back like 4 or 5 times that summer. Well, in those 4-hour drives, an interesting thing started happening because you have a lot of time to yourself on a 4-hour drive, time to think. Whereas usually I wasn't slowing down to do that sort of thing. I was just like busy, busy, busy. I'm like type A, so I just always getting stuff done. And so I wasn't able to take time for myself. And in those 4-hour trips, it took a couple of them. But finally, I started getting a little nostalgic because I was going back to where I grew up. I don't go there often. I was going back to where I grew up. And so I got nostalgic for the life I had when I was there. And when I started getting nostalgic for the life that I had when I was there, I started listening to music that I used to listen to. And the music that I was listening to was Michael W. Smith, DC Talk, right? The Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Like it was but goodies.
Right. Yeah. And as I was listening to it, it was like the Holy Spirit was speaking to me in a way that I had never heard it before. And it's almost like I needed to go through the things that I went through in order to hear it in a new and different way. The way that I describe it is, and I'll go into it more in just a second, but the way that I describe it is, it's almost like I walked into the deepest, blackest, darkest room possible. And then whenever I came back, it was like, I was like a massive light bulb inside this deep, dark room that just lit up everything. So everybody around me was like, what is going on with her? But whenever I started listening to the music, it started moving me. And then I kept listening to more and more and more. And the song that really got me was Michael W. Smith, I Miss the Way, which was a song that, strangely enough, whenever I was younger, I loved that song. I didn't have a reason to love that song because I hadn't been prodigal yet at that point. But whenever it came back to me, I feel like that's why I loved it when I was younger. It was like God knew, what was going to happen to me, and knew that was going to be a resonant thing for me later on in life. And anyway, that's just my thoughts. But I think
he sets us up.
Yeah.
I think he sets us up.
Yeah.
I just do. So
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. And so I was listening to it, and I started coming back at that point. So which was scary for me because my husband doesn't have a Christian background at all. So not even like a frustrating one, doesn't have one at all, has nothing to benchmark off of, and has felt maybe, and this is me speaking for him, which isn't fair, but I'm just going to say has felt maybe a little disenfranchised by religion before. And so I was, as I'm coming back, my first thought is, what's Mike going to do? What's my husband going to do that I love more than anything?
How long had you been married by that time?
We were married about 5 or 6 years at that point.
And before that, he was already speaking life into you.
Yeah.
I want to just drop that in there because I feel like that's part of God's setup again, you know? I don't know why I'm going to cry, but this is the part of your story that really spoke to me, is that in the midst of your brokenness, and you meet a man who's also not, he's also feeling broken as well. And yet he's speaking life over you, and
yeah.
Oh, it's just so, I think that's like it's a huge like part of your shift as well, I feel like, before before you come and encounter God in your car alone through the songs, you know, and Mike speaking life over you.
Yeah. That was,
Anyway.
it was the craziest thing, because I had gotten so far into the mucky muck that I had gotten married to the wrong person, and it ended in, you know, domestic violence and blood on the walls and that sort of thing. And then I felt like I totally, I mean, I remember my dad even saying, like, are you sure you want to get a divorce? And I'm like, yeah, I can't, you know, do this. And so, and I was an alcoholic. I was a raging alcoholic at that point. Like, I just was off the rails to the point.
You know, that's like something that you're saying, your dad says that, and it's obvious that people don't really know how deep it is, how deep you're in. And I recently heard a story of another young girl that I had no idea that she was suffering, you know, and I just want to point that out too, because, you know, we speak into people's lives without understanding how deep the darkness is that they're sitting in sometimes. And we really do need Jesus to help us to speak life into them, because we don't know, and we're judging based on what we see rather than, so you can't speak into that unless you're asking the Lord for insight. Anyways, just dropping some things in the middle of your story. It's so good. I
love it. No, this is great. Good. I love it. That's where Mike came into play, though, because I was living, I stayed in that city, and the ex-husband moved somewhere else. And a friend of mine was nice enough to let me stay in their basement. And it was, you know, I mean, it was a place to stay, and I'm very grateful for the place to stay. But I remember one night and you hear a lot about this, where I was sitting on the couch and staring at the wall, like in a drunken stupor, just like, what has happened to me? Because I could look back to my early life and say, on paper, I should have been all right. On paper, I would have been somebody that you would have been like, okay, you don't really need to work with her too much. She's going to be okay. And she wasn't okay. And so as I'm sitting there, not really sensing my own value anymore, and just thinking, man, I've really lost control of this life, and wondering how I get it back, how I get back to good. Because I didn't have any skill sets. I didn't see myself as having any skill sets, or I was just a mess and no value. And then walks in Mike. And Mike looks at this girl who is a mess, right? Like hit by a Mack truck mess. And he looks at me and he says, you're amazing at this, and you're amazing at that, and you're so good at this, and you're so good. And he didn't know what he was doing at that point. It's not like he read a book about speaking life over somebody. All he was doing was being honest with himself. He was like, here's what I see, I'm going to tell you. And that's all it was. And so that's just a beautiful way that Jesus works everything out. Everything gets worked out. People are used, right? Like, it's just he magically one day had a thought to speak life over me, and it changed the course of my entire life, our lives, and now like countless people's lives, just because of those words that he spoke in a basement one day. It's crazy.
This is it's so good. As I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm just thinking about all the people that have similar stories, and maybe they're still sitting on the couch. You know, especially with the last year and a half that we've had, I feel like there's a lot of people sitting in their junk and just feeling like there isn't a way out. And just hearing all the noise rather than able to dial it down. But I feel like in your story as well, and in my story too, you've got to arrive to a place where you're done. You're done with where you're at, and you recognize that it's not what you want. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to be sitting here, but I don't see a way forward. And you just start the conversation. And a lot of people do come to Jesus that way, even if it's coming back to Jesus, or initially it's like, I don't like what I have here. And if there is a God out there, and this is the conversation and how it starts. So I just wanted to point that out, that if you are out there and you're feeling this way, there is hope. And continue to listen to this story here and more stories to come, because God is on your side and he's for you, not against you. And there is a way and there's hope. So let's get back to Martha's story to hear the rest of it.
Oh, I just love that. I love that. Because now I'm able to look back at my life, and then I'll move forward here, but I'm able to look back at my life at this point and say, I get it. I get it. Right. And if we can't fully surrender to God's will for our life, you might not be able to look back and say, I get it. But the moment that you do surrender to God's will for your life, and understanding that, here's where I cry, nothing else matters, right? And whenever we fully surrender to that, then all of a sudden everything gets illuminated, and you can look back at your life, not in pain and in sorrow, but you can look back at it and say, I get it. I get why I walked through there. And also, thank you for keeping me safe. Right? Thank you for keeping me safe, even though I was renouncing your name, right? Even though I was doing everything but slapping you in the face, you kept me safe anyway. And then you ran after me to come get me anyway, regardless of all of the smack that I talked, right? That's a God that I love, right? That's who I will surrender my entire existence to, is that God that does that, right? So now let's just sit here and cry. Can we just sit here and cry?
I'm just going, he's not afraid. He's not afraid of your junk. He's not afraid of the darkness. He's not mad that you made choices that you made. Like, God is not mostly an angry God.
No.
He's mostly a loving father that wants the best for his children. And that is all that is in the word, is about living the best life that you can live, and having the best, not what our own families or the people around us give us. He's not a man that he would lie. He comes to rescue, and he comes for the brokenhearted, and he won't break you if you're broken. He's going to lift you up. So anyways.
Yeah. Well, so when I started listening to the songs in the car, and I was starting to come back, and I was kind of fearful, because I was like, does this mean divorce? That's what it was, my only thing I could go to, because I was so scared. I was like, I can't go buy a Bible, right? Like, I can't bring it into the house like that. And because is this man going to now look at me and be like, you're not who I married? And it was the scariest thing ever for me. And so what I did is, I would listen to music here and there, and I started going to church by myself. And I never, ever once made him feel like he needed to as well. I never made him feel less than, which we shouldn't, right? Or anything like that, because he wasn't coming to church with me. I made sure that our relationship was good, because there's our job and there's God's job, right? My job is just to do me. My job is to make sure that I'm showing up in a Christ-like way, in the way that, I'm supposed to be showing up in my world. God's job is to soften hearts, right? That's not, I'm not here to say, you need to come to church with me and you're a bad person and blah, blah, blah. I didn't want that, right? I didn't want that before. I was very, very sure that I didn't want that before. If somebody would have done that to me before, I would have been like, you can kick all the rocks, I'm out, right? And so I wasn't going to do that to anybody else. And all I did was I lived by example. I just did my thing, and I didn't make him wrong in any way.
And you didn't hide your light.
No.
That's just the point.
Yeah.
Shine your light. and whatever happens, happens. And you release people if you have to.
Yeah.
And you hold people if they want to be held.
Yep. Yeah. And then even within my business, I was doing essentially the same thing that I do right now, but man, it really felt like I was pushing a boulder up a hill. I was like, good grief, like what is going on here? This is solid gold, like this is awesome stuff. Like, why is this so hard? Right? Like, why is this so hard? And then one day it was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I just dropped to my knees. And I said, I'm not the steerer of this ship. I don't want it. It's what do you want to do with me? What is your will for my life? I'll do what you want me to do. It felt like a very Saul Paul moment, scales off. It was very just like, I refuse to do my own thing. I'm going to do what you want me to do, period. So use me. I have some skills. You could use me for that, but you're God and you're going to do what you're going to do. Right. But use me. And I'm not going to be the leader of the show. I'm not driving the car. I'll drive in the back, or I'll ride in the back seat. You drive the car. I'm riding in the back seat. Now take me where I need to go. And then that's where I call it like where I'm following divinely led footsteps, because from that day forward, everything, I mean, it's not easy. You still have to show up and do stuff, right? But
yes, please say that.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something in the faith community that I speak into a lot, because I feel like there is a handful of people, I don't know how many, but it feels like enough, that feel like if you get saved, everything goes super easy and well and all of that. Wow. And I go, even when you have something the Lord has said to you, you got to press into that. You got to work hard. What's your part? The part that's yours and the part that's God, which is what you said earlier as well, with even shining your light and not taking responsibility for softening people's hearts, because quite frankly, as you shine your light, some people's hearts might get hardened.
Yeah.
Instead of softened. And you have to just be aware of that.
Yeah. And no, it's not about you. That you do you regardless.
Right.
Yeah. So that's from that moment forward, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't easy. And I've actually found that while we can be in God's favor, while the best place on the planet, or the best place ever to be, is in God's favor, whenever you say that you'll do whatever is necessary, be prepared, because you will be called on to do what's necessary. And sometimes those things are frightening. Sometimes those things make you feel totally outside of your comfort zone, and they make you feel like, this is insane. Why do you have me doing this thing? This is freaking me out. But here's me
right now.
I love that.
We are doing interviews on YouTube after having a YouTube for, I don't know, 6 years, because God told me to get a YouTube, and I was like, I don't know what to do with that thing.
I got it. I don't know what to do with it. Right.
Here we are,
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the coolest thing is that whenever you say yes to doing something, all of a sudden, like, the people that you need help from in order to do that thing, they all come around you and all of that stuff. But it's very, very scary, because you're outside of yourself and you don't know the way forward. But the amazing thing is that that's where miracles happen. And that's where miracles can actually be seen, in my opinion, for what they are, because we can really only see miracles and explain them, and people see them in spots of potential desperation, in spots of like where you couldn't do it on your own. You had to have some sort of extra help. You speak to that miracle because you're like, guys, I couldn't have done this. Right? Like with my business, the way it blew up, I could not have done that on my own. I was pushing a boulder up a hill. I could not have done that on my own. And it was miraculous. it was the help of God, continual help of God, and continual checking back in to say, God, what do you have for me today? Like my morning prayer is make me a Moses, right? It's give me the things that I need to say so it lands on the hearts of people in a way they can best understand and take action from. That's my prayer daily. And it has nothing to do with me, and it has everything what God's message is for the world. And I'm not saying I speak for God. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying I do take myself out of the equation so other things are able to come through and other people can understand them in that way. But that's miracles. That's miraculous. And we have to get out of the way, and we also have to get into some scary places. It looks scary right before a miracle happens because it has to, right?
Let's go back to your time when you got saved. You started coming back to Jesus, and you were nervous because Mike wasn't there yet, and you didn't want to bring the Bible in because you thought that's too much too soon. But you just started shining your light. And I just want to go down that road just a little bit, because I also feel like there are others out there in these situations, and they just need encouragement that, you know, God works all things together for the good of those who love him. And it's oftentimes not what we think. It's oftentimes backwards from what the human mind would think is the way forward. And it's like kind of like the idea of going low instead of asserting, you know, go low. And I think actually that you demonstrate this really well just in your business, that a lot of people are not doing it this way. But to say you're heart-centered and you're giving more, and you give more, and you give more, and you give more, and that brings the favor of God. And it actually reminds me of the way David also built in the word, in the Bible. He built based on, oh, I don't have enough, well, I'm going to give more. Okay. So he got return on, because you can't outgive God.
Nope.
He owns it all, you know. And so this is stuff that draws me to you over the last year and a half, that made me say in the moment to invite you to the YouTube. It's like, I really, really love these things about Martha, and I can clearly see them, and I can clearly say, yes, I align with that. And I feel like that is some super necessary demonstration of God's way of doing things that no one is saying it. Everyone is saying, do it this way or do it that way. And you're exploding. And you're bringing people with you. That's the other thing too, bringing people with you. So anyways, back to Mike and that situation. Well, we can keep moving forward. I mean, I could just talk to you all day about this stuff, but I want to know what it was like for the time living with Mike after you got saved, even though he's the one who spoke life into you initially, and now you're going on this other thing and you're like not sure what's going to happen. And how was that living at home and not walking on eggshells and things?
Yeah, it was, at first it was, like I said, it was really scary because I didn't want to lose him, and I wasn't so back entrenched with my relationship with Jesus and God, that I wasn't back in a way that I could surrender, where I felt faith that everything was going to work out the way that it needed to. In just being honest, because it was like right as I was coming back, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is he going to do? And so what I did, I'm trying to remember back to those days. What I did was Nora came. So we already had Nora. Nora came with me to church. And so I would take her to church. The biggest thing that I made sure that I wasn't doing to him was making him feel like he had to be doing what I was doing. And he was saying things like, you're not going to be like an uber Christian, are you? Like, you're not. And here's the thing is, if anybody ever says that to you, understand that their version of what they're saying is based on something they've seen. It's not based on you and what you think they're saying. They're saying it based on something they've seen before and probably something they've been hurt by before. Right. And so he's like, you're not going to be like this person that hurt me once, essentially. Oh, here I go. And what I had to do in those moments without renouncing Jesus, I had to say, this is my choice and this is what I'm doing. And I love you more than anything. And you're going to do what you're going to do in it. I'm not judging you in any way. So there was many conversations that went along those lines because I needed for him to understand that I'm not somebody that's going to hurt him. And that's not what this is about, that this is my calling and that I have to do what I have to do. This is mine. And if it's for you, then it's for you at some point, but I'm not going to push you and make you feel like it has to be for you because that's not my place. That's the thing, is I had to understand my own place in this situation. And I think everybody probably has different places so far as that's concerned. But mine in this situation, based on his history, was to make him feel safe, loved, and honored regardless. And then he has come around on his own. We all go to church now on Sundays. He's got his own relationship with Jesus now. And but he came to it. It wasn't, I didn't drag him kicking and screaming to it. He came to it. And because he came to it, he's got the real thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's super important. I think back on times with relational stuff where I would never want somebody to say yes to me, or to be with me that didn't genuinely want to be with me, right. In the things, whatever it is, I think that's just an easy way to see relationship with Jesus is the same. He doesn't want you to come to him out of force. And really that's never true. And you're probably not going to stay.
Right.
If you don't have your own, if you don't decide for yourself, those things. So,
yeah.
Wow. So good. I've kind of come to a blank spot now.
I think I just want to explain to people, if they're watching this and they don't have the kind of relationship with Jesus that we're talking about right now, I just want to kind of explain what my relationship with Jesus feels like. And then that's it. I just want to explain that for people. My relationship with Jesus at this point, and it wasn't like this even when I was in church when I was a kid, when I went to Bible camps every summer. I went to church 3 times a week, the Sunday, twice on Sunday, once on Wednesday, sometimes other times during the week, right? And doing all of the activities and totally immersed. And I still didn't have the relationship that I do now. And the relationship that I have now is of a friend, of a protector, of a warrior, of a teacher, of a father. I go into, people will message me sometimes and ask me how I pray, which I'm like, why are they asking? But that's just because everybody's different. The way that I talk to Jesus is like a conversation, like, if I was talking to my dad or if I'm talking to whoever, I talk to Jesus about what's going on in my life. And I ask for illumination of things. I ask for things. I'm not asking to win the lottery. I did that before, but I I don't do it anymore.
Full on confessions.
Let's just be real. But what I ask for now is illumination. I ask for wisdom. So I ask for things because I'm a little bit flighty and a little chaotic and I'm like, right? But But what I ask for now is the illumination for me to be able to not miss things. Make it so I can't not see it. Like shut the doors, nail the doors shut that you don't want me barging into, because I am like, know yourself, right? So I am, and God knows me to be a bull in a china shop sometimes. When I have something I want to do, I do it, I go. So what I ask of God is, hey, listen, nail the doors shut that I'm not supposed to go through. Don't even let me get through those doors, right? We were supposed to move to Hawaii before we moved to Florida. We live in Florida now. We were wanting to move to Hawaii. Don't you know COVID happened? And then we had real estate agents still looking for houses there because, hi, I'm Martha and I'm a bull in a china shop. And I'm like, I don't care. We're getting a house in Hawaii, right? And God's like, no, you're not, Martha, because you can't even get yourself on a plane to get to Hawaii. They're like, the planes were shut down. You couldn't go to Hawaii. Like the door was nailed shut. You see what I'm saying? And then this door opened up in Orlando. And now I see why it opened up here, because I see all of the opportunities for ministry and the different things that we do here. Nora's school, all of the stuff that's here is absolutely perfect for us. But we had to be guided here because this door was shut. So like, those are the kind of prayers that I pray where I request guidance. We have to ask for this stuff. It isn't just given to us. We have to ask for this stuff and have conversations and say, is this right for me? Is this my thing? Is this mine? Or is it just me wanting it? If it's just me wanting it, shut the door. I'm all right with that. Your will is mine, right? So shut the door, open the door wide and bright, so it's the only other thing I can see, so that I can walk through that and know that it's your will. That's the kind of conversations that I have with God, that and Jesus. That is like that is it. That's where I live, is in that space. So if you're not currently feeling that kind of relationship with your creator, let me tell you, it's there for you. You can absolutely have it. Just start talking. Because God wants nothing more than communication with us. That's a communication and a relationship with us. We are his children. We are doing things here that are essentially shifting this planet. We need each other, but we need him. And we need really good guidance. And we need a good relationship. So you're not just going off what's in your head and like, I think this is good. I think this is good. I think this is good. That's the worst thing you could do. I guarantee that's not going to end up the way you think it's going to end up. But if we communicate with our creator, we have conversations and ask for wisdom and discernment and illumination in those modes, in those times that we're talking, then you're going to end up with some things that you had no idea were even possible. And that's what I wanted to leave.
You know what? I love that, because as I'm listening to you, I feel like something that I like for people to know is that it's a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a journey. It takes process. It takes learning. It takes investing. That God is relational. He has always been relational. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent his son to pay the price for us. He sent his son because he is so relational and he loves us so much. And we are the only creatures on the earth that he created in his own image. So you are precious to God. But I also heard you saying that in your time in talking with Jesus, that you asked him, but earlier you said, I didn't slow down enough to hear or to know or to see. And so that is something else. When we come into the place of prayer and we come into the place of communion with God, it's actually in the place of quiet that we hear the best. You can't really hear if you're talking. So I want to encourage you that you go ahead and go in and ask, but also make sure you're sitting and you're listening for that response from the Lord. And also the next thing that I heard you talking about, third thing, is looking for God in the stuff. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking around at your life and where the direction it's going and the people that are in it, you're looking for God's hand and God's breath on those things. And again, asking and listening, watching. And I think those are important points to make, just because a lot of times we can look at someone's life and we can see, and this is again why Martha coming on is so important, because her life is amazing right now. And when you're looking from the outside in, you might think, gosh, that woman just has favor and she's just awesome and God loves her clearly. We're all broken people. We all start at the same point. We started as a baby, as a seed. We all grew into where we're at, and we all have the journey. So I just want to say again, that favor is partly about you learning your part, you coming into agreement with God's heart for you, with his thoughts towards you, which are not bad. They're for hope and a future. That's who God is. He has hope and a future for you, not all the things that are negative that you might be thinking about yourself and about your journey. And I like also that you said you're able to look back on your journey and look back with appreciation and understanding and see the point and the purpose behind it. I don't believe that God has intentional suffering for us. However, without all of the process that we go through and the choices that we make, we cannot see the goodness of God to the degree that we see it. And the Bible says that those who have been forgiven much, love much. I didn't say it. Okay. So that doesn't mean I want to suffer more so that I can feel that depth of love or anything. However, I appreciate the suffering that I've gone through, because honestly, it helps you to actually see people for who they are and who God intends them to be. And it helps you to take your hand off of things and not try to control everything. So, wow, this has just been such a good time talking with you, Martha, just bringing up all the gold nuggets in this conversation of, walking our lives out, making our choices, learning those aren't the things we want. I mean, we watch our kids do that as moms, and we want to save them from the things, but a lot of times it's better to let them experience the boundaries that they want to set for themselves, and come into that knowing on their own. So anyways, thank you so much. And I want to tell you guys that if you love what you've heard here, Martha is a business strategist. She is the best in that arena. In my opinion, I have never invested in myself in these kinds of programs before, because honestly, I just didn't want to waste my money. So head over to Martha's YouTube channel. She has lots of free information, free videos where it will help you to build your business. If you don't have a business and you want a business from your home, you need to get on this train. I'm just saying that. She did not ask me to say that. I'm saying that because I fell in love with this woman over this last year and a half through following the nudges of the Lord in leading me into her arena. And so she does have a lot of stuff to offer. She overgives. Okay, she overgives. So you're never going to regret the investment that you make. You will get everything that you expect to get out of it and more. I'm just saying that. Okay, and then secondly, click subscribe and the bell if you want to hear more stories like this on this channel. Okay, guys, you have a wonderful day. Thank you, Martha, again. I'm just so happy you showed up with us today.
Thank you so much. Also, let me just say super quick before you pop out that this series of videos that you're doing is going to change the entire planet. And I appreciate you for showing up in precisely what you're doing, because man, this is some good stuff. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Martha. You made me cry on the way out.